But not.
Hello.
Howdy.
What panel is this again?
All right, we're figuring out mics.
No.
There we go.
Need a little wireless.
There we go.
Look
All
at
right.
that.
Good. I can walk around and touch people.
Go out in the audience. Should we just say something off the bat that we're going to do pitches? We're going to work through pitches on this panel?
We'll probably introduce the panel and ourselves.
Yeah.
I would say.
Well, I just wanted to get it off the bat.
So the way this is going to work, we're going to talk through some different writing ideas and kind of experience and things that we've worked on, but then we're going to open it up to you guys to talk through some of your ideas, and then we can kind of workshop them and play around with them, and then have some fun. And we also, if you have something, we have some
So
merch
tweet
to
them
give
at
you.
us.
Yeah, you can tweet or...
At Rev Aaron Marquis. And
Aaron's trying to plug his Twitter.
And friend me.
Piece of shit.
But yeah, or we'll have a mic that you can...
Yeah, we'll take some live too.
Yeah.
Cool.
Mostly live.
But yeah, this is the writing panel. Let's go through introductions.
Yeah, writers for live actions.
Writers, yes, specifically. But joining us today is I'm Blaine Gibson.
What? And Blaine, tell us, what do you write?
Well, I don't know if you can necessarily call it, but there's a certain degree of writing to $1 Million Bud. I've been recently working on immersion. I've hopped on shorts here and there. Josh and I co-wrote 11 Little Roosters together. Just a couple projects here and there.
I'm Chris Damaris. I've worked on... Thank you. I've worked on RT shorts, Social Disorder, which there actually is a lot of writing in unscripted show like that. Laser Team, Day 5, some other stuff too. I can't think right now.
Marshall Rimmer. I do a lot of the shorts. I do a lot of the branded integration shorts. Did a little bit of work on Laser Team 2, and working right now on a Top Secret series. So
Top Secret.
Confidential.
Yeah. I'm Dave Jasmine. You don't know who I am. I work on Marshall's Top Secret thing. I do a lot of the sponsored shorts, and I've done one short called Kangaroo Attack.
Very nice. I'm Aaron Marquis. I've done... thank you. Done some shorts, done some Social Disorder, done some Day 5, and I'm doing an ultra top secret project.
Ooh.
Did you hear ultra at the top of that?
I'm doing a super ultra top secret.
I don't even know what it is that I'm doing.
They haven't even told you.
Yeah, but I'm excited about it.
Hi, I'm Josh Flanagan. Also, did everybody get a cheer after their name except for Blaine?
Oh,
I
yeah,
feel like
yeah.
that happened right now. There's your fan, Blaine.
Thank you.
What do I write? I write the 10 11 Little Roosters, Day 5, Laser Team, some shorts. I'm also on the Ultra Secret project with Aaron and Chris, which since there's 3 of us, that's 3 Ultras to Marshall's 1 Little Ultra.
Did you hear that?
And I'm here for you.
Why you gotta make me feel sad, Josh?
Compensating, Marshall.
All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys were here for last year's panel, but we'll go over and kind of talk about our writing process and things like that at the end. Again, we'll take submissions, but send us a log line. Send any of us on Twitter like a log line we can go through and kind of workshop you guys' ideas. But I mean, do you want to get into just kind of talking about our process in general?
Yeah, I think it kind of varies a lot depending on what type of show or project it is. Sure. I think for something like shorts, where you're writing sketches, that's more of a funny idea. It's like, that's a funny idea, and then can you go from, oh, that makes you laugh thinking about it, can you then come up with something that's going to continue to surprise someone for 5 minutes? rather than like, okay, is that an idea that you laugh at once? Is that a joke or is that a sketch?
Yeah.
And I think that's like a lot of what it is finding ways to surprise the audience.
Yeah.
And that goes to pretty much anything, any writing. It's I think a short is a great like microcosm of like you got to introduce things and then as quickly as possible. But then here's the premise, and then you want to try and at some point in the premise change it and surprise the audience so they're now watching something that they weren't expecting.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, hitting all those points in a matter of 3 to 5 minutes, beginning, middle, and end, and just like trying to make sure that you're not projecting the joke and that they're like a step ahead of you and, messing with people's expectations stuff. It's a pretty big challenge, but it's also a lot of fun. And we talked about this on the Shorts panel, but Shorts is a really fun, way of kind of exploring, going like really weird with the writing style. You can explore different types of like genres and shit like that when you're doing Shorts because it's just a one-off thing.
Yeah.
As opposed to like a feature-length type thing or a longer form, which is, day 5 and whatnot, which that's a completely different beast that you guys can touch on.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, but some of that stuff carries over though. Like on a broad basis, when you're breaking a story, like seasonal story, you get like these kind of pillars in it of things you want to see. It might just be a kernel of something. We can't talk about it, but for season 2, you brought in, even you were talking about in season 1 and end of season 1, just an idea for, I think this character should be this, for the entire season, and you can build a season around something like that.
Yeah,
Just a surprise,
Yeah, the building blocks are surprisingly. I mean, they're the same. I mean,
Yeah.
you want a good concept to start. You want to build your project around that concept. If it's a comedy, you want to try and tether your jokes to that concept as much as possible. The drama, the same thing. Day 5, people can't sleep. So what does that mean? In that world, it means people are using drugs to stay awake. What else can they do? Well, they could use pain to stay awake. That means they can't use anesthesia during surgery. They can't put people out. So if you get injured, you're gonna have to go through it and feel all the pain and all these things. So you're looking at like those connections, and those are the sort of details that I think make a world feel complete too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
kind of jumping off of that too, I think this might be a little part of Day 5, but there's this whole like idea of working within limitations. Like you have these like this structure that you have to follow, like rules. I'm trying to think of an example of something other than sleep, like that VR short that we were talking about, like.
So yeah, that's a really good example of a short that kind of went through a process where we did this short. It was I don't know if you guys saw it. It was you and Bernie, you pitching VR to Bernie, right? A VR thing. And wait, do you want to quickly?
Yeah, I mean, so basically, what it was we did a what was it, Indiegogo for Laser Team, and basically we had this one perk where if you donated this much, you can be in an RT short. So like we filmed, we had this original script, years ago that I'd written, and we filmed these bits with people that had donated coming in and shooting their little parts on green screen. And then over time, like something happened.
Basically, we realized that the script that Blaine wrote was bad.
It was bad.
It was awful.
But we had these. We'd already filmed the sections with the backers from the Indiegogo, and so we're like, we need to make this script work. And so we kind of just Blaine reworked the script. We gave notes, and then rewrote around his bad script.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's one of those things. It was kind of a rush job because it was like, okay, hey, we need a short right now. They're coming in next week. Let's get a script. And it was like, okay. And you jot down your first, draft, and it's not great. So we already we're kind of our backs were against the walls. We had this existing footage that we had to write a short around. Same thing with Day 5. You had that thing that in RTX that you guys shot on Congress. At RTX years ago, and you guys had to integrate that into the show somehow. With Joel. And it's just like one of those things that it's actually kind of freeing to work under these restrictions. It's like that you have to hit these specific points. And I don't know.
Yeah, I think what... Oh, go ahead, Marshall.
I was going to say, that's what's nice about limitations. It gives you direction. If you sit in a room and you say, I have all the time in the world, I have all the money in the world, all the resources in the world, like you're not going to make anything good.
Yeah.
But if you say, okay, I have $100 to spend on props, and
I'm at a
I have-
grocery store.
Exactly. Who do I know? What locations can I get hooked up with? Like suddenly a story starts to come together.
Yeah.
There were so many RT shorts that were written based off what do we have in the warehouse. It's like, oh, we have a scissor lift. Okay, we can write let's write a short about a scissor lift, and then me and Marshall wrote Dastardly Painter. It's like, or it's I think there was, I mean, it's really like, so if you're writing at home, you're like, I don't know what to write, or I can't do this. It's like, well, what do you have? What can you make? If you have friends and you want to make something, it's like, or what do you have the resources available? Maybe your friend's dad works at I don't know what's
Auto repair shop.
yeah. It's like, okay, write something in auto repair because you can use it, and that's money on screen that looks good. 'Cause it's like, okay, that's a cool location, that's a cool backdrop, and it adds production value.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had something with Day 5 Season 2, which this won't spoil anything, but we had a scene between two characters that we knew this scene needed to exist for like emotional and kind of story purposes. We didn't know where it was set or anything, and then we had started location scouting already, and realized we were going to be able to get this really awesome like airplane museum hangar with these really old like giant World War II bombers and planes and stuff, so we wrote it, we adapted it to that, and it was cool. But it was just like, and then we wrote the scene contextually where they actually reference the stuff that's in it and stuff. So it's cool.
That short, that VR short, whenever you hump that thing in the corner, like, talking about writing is fine, but when you hump that thing in the corner, I watch that all the time. That's your finest moment, I think,
Well, thank
by
you.
far. That was the first draft of his script for that. It said Blaine humps the corner, and it was like 5 pages of Blaine humping the corner. So,
It's also the original cut was like 30 minutes long.
oh, it was
Yeah.
30
Yeah.
minutes
Humping the
long, and a lot of repeated shots. Yeah.
Several angles. Another thing that, kind of following in that same vein is oftentimes with Rooster Teeth, we have like, video game companies or, somebody like Maltesers. They're like, hey, we want to do a cool video with you guys. What kind of content can you make? And it's like, well, we've got these specific pieces. Like,
Well, it's like viewing it from that perspective. It's like, what are some ideas that we've always wanted to make?
Yeah.
That they'll help us fund things. And so then it's like, okay, well, what's a creative way to write? It's like you're giving yourself limitations, and actually it feeds a lot of like really creative stuff. We're like, okay, now we can finally do this idea if we adapt it here.
Yeah. But it's, it's just one of those things that you have those little check marks, and sometimes that can really focus you in, give you a lot of direction. Like Marshall said, if you have infinite possibilities, infinite money, you're just so scatterbrained, you don't really know. But if you like isolate, hey, these are the specific parts that I want to hit, that for me helps me.
Can you guys think of an instance that either a short or whatever started from just a kernel of an idea? It's like, I want to see, or Blaine humping in the corner, or, whatever the case is. Like it was just like I remember the motorcycle short, right? It was when I got the motorcycle, it's like, man, Aaron's going to die on that thing. Maybe we'll just write something around that, or whatever. But can you guys think of an instance?
Well, there's a short we did a few years back about Google Plus. You guys remember that gem, Google Plus? And that came from the idea of just like, what is Tom from MySpace doing these days?
Right.
And so that was funny too, because that was an idea that I had like sat on for a year or two, because it was like, well, clearly MySpace is not relevant anymore. But then as soon as Google Plus came out and it was like in the zeitgeist for all of 3 weeks, like suddenly it was like, oh, actually we can have a short that has a homeless Tom in it, and like Mark Zuckerberg and Social Network had just come out, so everything kind of came together. It was
I mean, I think you might have an idea that's like, I don't know where this goes, but write it down and then keep.
Yeah,
and
always write everything down.
Yes. I know it sounds dumb. It's like carrying around a notepad or something. I don't carry around a notepad, but I have a thing on my phone where I just like, if I have any sort of like, oh, that made me laugh, or oh, that might be interesting. Well, that's a funny scene.
Yeah, and like I'll even have folders of like, funny lines or funny scenes or funny characters, just have a lot of stuff on my computer broken up by that. Yeah.
And it's one of those, I know I've been in conversations with people where like just someone will say something funny, or and I'll be like,
I'm going to steal that for later. Thank you.
that's a funny, conversation.
There was like an old short that we did. It was I can't remember what it was about, but basically like Chris was in a romance with Barbara, and you were combining things to impress her or something like that.
Yeah.
And like I think like what when we were pitching it and stuff like that, I was like, I think it'd be funny if, like, by the end of this, like, Chris is morphed into all these things. He's got like a lobster arm, he's got boobs and stuff like that. And then I was like, well, you know, like, let's write what that story is leading to that point, and you know. So
Yeah, you know where you want to end up, and then you have to find a way to get there that isn't that the audience isn't ahead.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest problem that you can have when writing is letting the audience know where you're going.
Yeah.
If the audience it's like, oh well, obviously he's going to do this next. Oh, now he's going to do this. Now, then it's boring. But if like the audience thinks, oh, he's going to do this. Oh shit, he just took off his pants or whatever. You know, like then all of a sudden it's like you're surprised, and that's what you want to do with anything. If you're writing a feature or something or a show, as big project wise, you want to surprise the audience here and here and here at the big plot points. But then also on a scene by scene basis, every time you write a scene, there needs to be turns and surprises within each scene.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of which, why don't we just go look at a pitch or something, a log line?
Yeah.
We can see if we got one. Let's
pull one up.
Yeah, and we can
Yeah,
kind of
Joe-
scatter them through if you.
Anybody?
Let's check
Do we have a mic?
tweets.
Or yeah, let's just. Does anyone have a mic that want to
I
come up
guarantee
and
no one
talk through
tweeted
something?
me. Let's see here. Do we have a mic?
We should just do it. Yeah, we should do it live.
Yeah, let's do live.
Do we have
I'll see if
another?
anyone
Is there
tweeted.
a mic? Is there a Q&A mic hiding somewhere that we could?
I
send
can
them?
go out in the audience.
Oh, there it is. Okay, yeah,
Hello.
yeah. So a couple of you guys want to go to the mic and just pitch, give us a concept, and we'll see what we can do.
There are some good ones though on Twitter.
Are they?
Yeah.
Find. We'll,
Go ahead.
Okay, so I have a live action thing I've been working on for a while, never got around to fully fleshing it out. It's got to do with werewolves. There's a werewolf who's all alone, doesn't want to be in a pack, and instead studies other monsters. And the show is how to deal with other monsters from a werewolf's perspective.
I read this romance book. My mom had it.
So then it could be like other mythological animals. So you could have like unicorns and no, seriously, like you know, just that.
or do you mean like vampires and stuff like that?
like-
right? Like monsters.
No, vampires don't exist.
They don't exist. Oh my god.
What
that's-
exists in your world?
Wait, werewolves
Yeah.
are alive, but vampire? Is there mummies?
Yeah,
I mean,
they're
I think-
mummies.
Oh, everything but vampires exists.
Okay.
That's kind of funny.
Fuck vampires.
Edward is not there.
And so the werewolves are like, they're having conversation and they're like, yeah, fucking vampires don't exist. That's stupid.
It's ridiculous.
That's ridiculous.
Like, let's go hang out with, Sherry the fairy.
Well, it's interesting though, trying to fit in with, that's a interesting click story. I mean, it would be more interesting with vampires, but yeah, I mean, you could exploring that. I mean, even with, human monsters, if you wanted to, like people monsters, you could have the whole spectrum of seeing how they fit in. Like,
Like
is there
Jason
anything-
Voorhees or something, like masked serial killers, or
It could be serial killers. It could be just be, unmasked serial killers. It could be politicians. It could be anything.
I mean, I like the idea of just like all the monsters thinking they're having, these conversations, but really to them, the monsters are humans, like all humans, and werewolves and not vampires, but all the other mythological creatures.
It depends tonally what you want to do too. Like if the werewolf is trying to kill people and isn't good at it, and people are, like all these other monsters, like no, yeah, the jugular. And it's like, oh, it's a nice, pleasant story. Or if it's a werewolf that doesn't want to do that,
Is the werewolf actually a werewolf, or is it just a really hairy guy?
because Dave is technically a werewolf by those standards.
I'm sensitive about the whole thing. I'm just saying, when you're workshopping this or pitching it out, there's dozens of us.
My mind is just like immediately kind of wonders to, you got this like horrifying giant massive werewolf creature, and I think it would be funny if he ends up like joining a group of rabbits. He like kind of takes a turn for the kinder, and he kind of like goes against the grain.
And he eventually eats all those rabbits.
But by the end of it, he ends up with a family of like really loving little creatures or something.
I think another important thing is like a story like this. One important thing is to make sure that each scene builds off the last one. So it would be very easy to kind of fall into the pitfall of, okay, the werewolf goes and hangs out with mummies, and then the werewolf goes and hangs out with the non-vampires. But basically, you want to make sure that each scene gives a reason to progress from one to the other, or else the story's going to be really flat. So you definitely want to be kind of building along the way, and you want each scene, when they hang out with the mythological creatures, you want each one to give reason for the next one.
Yeah, actually, on that note, I'd be curious, who's your main character and what does he want? Because what your main character wants that's what drives your story.
I mean, the main character is the werewolf without the pack. And basically what he wants in the beginning is just to research other creatures and get that information out to other people. So when other people encounter the creatures, they don't freak out. They know what to do.
Oh,
So
so he's
it's-
trying to help people? He's trying to
Yeah,
warn against...
I mean, the point is to help creatures and people, so the people don't freak out when they meet the creatures, and the creatures don't freak out when they meet the people.
Okay, so he's like kind of like a good Samaritan. Because, like, I mean, I don't know if this is the genre that you had in mind, but I'm instinctively going to comedy, just because that kind of sounds like a goofy, sort of funny setup. And then
Comedy
I'm-
was the idea, but I'm
Yeah.
open to suggestions.
He sounds like the Nelson Mandela of werewolves, like bringing people together. Like, that's pretty good. I mean, you could have a werewolf that's been imprisoned for a long time, and it's like trying to, working on this book from prison, and like you totally don't, you wouldn't even have to acknowledge he's.
Yeah, this
a
whole thing
werewolf,
ends with like a motivational speech with Werewolf on a stage like this with the headset mic.
Well, I'm imagining like the werewolf is, maybe trying to disguise himself, and he's like this giant werewolf, so he's like really struggling to fit in with fairies. Like seeing a werewolf trying to like hide that he's a werewolf, and he's got like little wings and stuff like that. Another
We
thing,
should give more rights to the werewolves.
and then I'm also thinking too, like, kind of going off of what Marshall said, like each scene should also be an escalation off of the next. Like, I mean, the next thing should be more wacky, more funny, so that it's like building, kind of like Marshall said.
Yeah, in a world like that too, there's so much that you would be excited about doing because you're like, oh, there's all these monsters and all these fun things you want to do. So you get caught up in, I want to fit all these things in, as opposed to worrying about how one scene connects to the next.
Yeah.
I think a really easy fix to that escalation, road trip movies always have kind of an easy out because you're trying to get from one destination to another. And so each stop along the way is a natural progression. So that always kind of, like a road trip, not like a traditional road trip movie, but, the werewolf goes on some kind of hike, whatever, is an easy way to find that causality from one scene to the next.
Cool. Actually, I want to, real quick, someone mentioned this idea yesterday to me. They came up and asked about it. They're like, what do you think about doing a short based off the gift shop at Auschwitz?
Oh, that's right. And he went.
And because I was like, is that a
That'll be
real thing?
Is this like modern day Auschwitz or like
Well, it's
1940s? Like,
I don't know if this is true or not, but they said there's a gift shop at Auschwitz.
oh god.
Thanks for coming, folks.
Well, what started that? Because I think I met that same guy. What started it was he said, Aaron, how do you approach something that could be kind of risque, the subject matter. I'm like, well, it just depends on what you're trying to say, and context. Because if you're just talking about a gift shop at Auschwitz and just, he said, well, I'm Jewish and all this stuff. I'm like, well, I understand that, but people won't know that, and it shouldn't matter. It's what you're saying with it. And he was like, oh, so I shouldn't have the ash-filled thing. I was like, okay, hold on one second. You should think about what you're trying to say. So there's that. And then there's the funny.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of potential for comedy with that
Absolutely.
premise. It's because you go, oh. And the fact that it's a real thing, there's opportunity for commentary there.
I think there's also a lot of room for commentary in there, like maybe the commercialization.
That's what I
of
just
like,
said.
Wait, really? Yeah. You said comedy, not
Commentary.
commentary. I'm sorry, I can't understand Chris.
Comedy is all about listening to each other.
That's an important part of the writing room. What was your name again?
Well, I could just imagine it might be a thing where they're trying to expand the gift shop, but they have to use they have to knock down some of like the, crematorium or something like
lightly.
that. And they're like, but we could use the 20% boost in revenue, and they're trying to knock something down in the actual camp
Or they leave it up and it's like the oven is the display table or
Right.
something. Just like, yeah. See, there you go. Perfect.
See?
And we
Print it.
We have these ovens. What if we sold cookies and made?
Yeah. Well, I can almost imagine, a short or a small thing where you play the first 5 minutes of it just as a straight. It takes place in 1944 or 43, and the struggle within the camp, and then you do a flash forward to like, and would you like paper or plastic with that? It's like it morphs from the same spot they're in to like the gift shop, and you're like, and immediately puts you in the setting.
It's like a parallel story.
It's a parallel story. Yeah.
It's like Schindler's List in the beginning, and then at the end it's like, oh, happy and colorful.
And
But
they're reading like a return receipt slip instead. But,
I just had a really.
yeah, you better do it. You better say it.
Just thinking like in the past it's like a pile of clothes, but then in the future it's like racks of shirts.
Racks of
and stuff.
shirts.
Yeah.
Rewatch it.
But you need to know what you're trying to say
right.
with a short.
I mean, I think the idea is like, are you commenting on how people are trying to, profit off of
Right.
tragedy,
Anyone else?
Yeah.
this horrible thing, and it's like, why not? People sell, same way people will sell like 9/11, like, memorabilia things,
Right.
to try. I mean, but it's like they're kind of profiting off
commercializing.
that.
Yeah. Somebody makes a profit off that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's.
Including us for making this short.
Oh yeah, we are. I totally am taking that idea. Let's
So you're
make it
telling
next
me
week.
to incorporate this in my story, right?
Right.
The werewolf's got quite a ride. Here, do you want to come up and
Twitter?
give you? Yeah, or let's the next person in line actually.
Let's go.
Oh, we got
over
line over
we
here.
got another line. Let's start with this gentleman.
Okay. So my general idea that I've kind of been working on a little bit, it's kind of a sci-fi alien-related conspiracy theory story where all humans, as we know it, like the general public, are all kind of predestined, pre-wired to work towards this final alien harvest that's coming at a certain time. And then there's this select government officials that are kind of like overseeing this whole project. And then the main character is basically this guy that kind of gets unknowingly involved with this and kind of figures out like what's going on. And it's basically trying to fight destiny almost, where he's trying to stop this whole alien harvest kind of thing that these select officials are kind of knowing. But pretty much the main premise of it is that everything that we're doing is kind of just leading up to this harvest, and we're not
being
really
eaten?
knowing.
Is that what the harvest is?
No,
or is it...
like the earth. They're basically just, we're preparing the earth for them to come and take what they need. But right now it's not ready. So it kind of goes into like pyramids and Stonehenge. Like this was all just a long play, and this was all part of the overarching plan.
It's like Farmville for aliens.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm kind of getting like John Carpenter's They Live vibes.
Yeah,
a
that's
little bit,
that's what I thought too.
which is a solid fucking movie. By
I
the
assume
way.
this is like dramatic. Yes.
Yeah.
Like not. I mean, my mind went comedy. It was just like I just hope that whatever that we're harvesting is worthless. It's
Yeah.
like it's basically like the equivalent of like corn or something. You're like, oh.
or
like
even,
salt or-
Even if we're making just plastic for
Yeah.
them, like they want those little things that you put 6-packs in. Like they want all of those
Yeah.
things. And now we're phasing them out, and they're getting really pissed off. Like, there's also some people that like maybe they know. Like, do humans know about the harvest, or some do?
So like
Government officials or something?
there's like the dark government is kind of like the trope with it, but they know, but there's some people that do know, but they kind of just get pushed off as like crazy conspiracy theorists by the government. They're like, oh, don't believe them, they're just insane, don't worry about it. But the one guy, like the main character, he knows, but he's not going the route of like crazy conspiracy. He's not on the corner like the time's coming, it's like be prepared, but he's just trying to kind of figure this out and see if there's a way to stop this or prevent this.
Well, I mean, I know this isn't really writing related, but I think you should definitely cast Randy Quaid for one of those parts.
Well, there's a route where you get to where destroying the Earth is it's weird. It's because the aliens would want to, I guess, get this great harvest or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, naturally, we're kind of destroying things right now, right? So wouldn't they be a little upset with us possibly? And if they didn't, basically for all of human existence, we were making these great things, pyramids, blah, 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 and then we started doing a bunch of stuff that was kind of harming their harvest. So I don't know if that's the part of the conflict in it.
I feel like this is a movie that's it's a huge global encompassing story.
Yeah.
But I think an important thing for this is to focus on a micro level, on one man's journey, and then just kind of world build out from there. And I think that those kinds of stories are always way more interesting than one where it's like, I don't know, fucking Transformers, where you're just like jumping all over the place and you're seeing what's happening all around the world, as opposed to like just one dude's story in this like overall narrative.
Yeah, making it personal is really important. Like what Blaine's saying. There's some quote, I'm going to totally butcher it, but it's like, you kill 1 million people, that's a statistic. You kill one person, it's a tragedy. And so keeping that in mind of making it really personal and all about your main character and less about the whole world at stake, but what does your character love? Who does he love? And make those the stakes.
Also in a place where we don't all have $5 billion to make these movies, like a crazy, like multi-world alien movie, like focusing on the humanity aspect of it is just more achievable for, a personal project like this.
Yeah.
Does this take place in 2017? Because if so, they should just let the aliens just do what they want.
Yeah, it was going to be current. It wasn't going to be like 2100 or whatever.
In the year 2015. It's like back.
So there's hope.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think about what else, what else we need to hit. Like,
I guess just the rest of the plot. Other than that, that's part of the writer's room. I swear, it's sitting and staring at a board and going, I can't do this. I don't know. And just like working through, like there was times, I remember in the season 2, day 5 writing room, where we're just sitting there for like an hour, and then someone would go like, no.
Yeah.
And then, it's,
No,
so you just got to hammer it out.
I had this experience yesterday morning before coming to RTX. I was doing, because my day 5 cast is in town, so we were doing some dubbing on some of the season 2 episodes, and there was a part we had rewritten, and we kind of needed it to go one way emotionally, because it just wasn't ultimately lining up. So we did that a lot too, actually, in post. We're talking mostly up here about writing at the beginning, but we actually rewrite things sort of through the whole process. We rewrite day 5 on set. We rewrite it in post by adding new lines or saying, well, this doesn't make sense or whatever. So I literally did that this morning, and that's the hardest thing is sitting there with a deadline and being like, be smart now. Be funny. And I told Brad, our sound mixer, I was like, I can't do this. And then 10 minutes later, I was like, I got it. I know what it is. And it was just, it's a bipolar process of you're super inspired and then you're an idiot like 2 seconds later.
And it's worse on set, I think, because then you have, in certain productions, you might have 60 people staring at you. Even 10 people or 5 people is bad. But like when everyone, a line isn't working because you're not in that location that was written or something like that, or you don't have that prop, and someone turns to you and goes, hey, Aaron, so what should the line be instead? And it's like, this, because it can't just be a throwaway thing, because this is going to be in the movie, or the show, whatever it is, and it's, I don't remember where I was going with that. It's constant writing. It's from before you shoot it to shooting it to after you shoot it.
Yeah.
Chris, you want to take another one?
Cool.
Yeah, let's do the next
Do
one.
another one. Go back to going back over here.
I'm trying to write a novel, have been for a while, and it's biblically inspired. Like, the idea is that fallen angels basically said fuck everything and took over the world after Noah's flood, and they've built up this global empire, elitism everywhere, and the main character was born to this, was actually literally son of the devil, was kind of a reverse Moses, was thrown into a river, like they tried to drown him. So he was more or less raised a slave, discovered and brought back into this, and it's basically him trying to wreck everything, bring things back to the way they're supposed to be after they've been like this for thousands of years.
So the way things supposed to be, it was supposed to be like a cleansed utopian society. Is that what you're saying, or is it something like that, or?
So this or whatever time frame it was supposed to be. Basically, everything, all human society, culture, all of it has been unified and altered, and it didn't follow the natural progression.
So does this story take place like back when this occurred, or is this like modern day? If that had happened back then, now we're seeing what society is like today.
It's probably closer to modern day, just an altered modern day.
Okay.
We have they taught magic, they taught science, so stuff progressed a lot faster and blended together. So you have all sorts of archaic stuff alongside modern day things. You have floating castles, you have AA guns, all sorts of stuff like that.
Sounds like a really fantastic backdrop, like a like fantasy and stuff.
I will say, just as a log line, like it's a reverse Moses story is a really good log line. It's like, oh, that sounds cool. And we pull a lot. It's cool that you have so much mythology to work with too, because we do that a lot too. I know, like Chris and I, for instance, on Laser Team, we pulled a lot from
Greek.
Greek mythology for the Perseus story, and so some of it's like that's the kind of stuff that you don't necessarily see it on the surface, but a lot of times if you can find some kind of mythology to lay in as a backbone to a story, like you feel it as a viewer. There's something more complete about that world, something familiar in a good way. So it's good that you're working in an arena where you can actually pull from a lot, because it's like you wouldn't just have to stick to the Moses story or the Noah's flood. You could pull from any manner of the Bible basically at this point, and it would be thematic for you.
You'd have a reverse, instead of parting the seas, they just fall on some people.
Yeah.
Reverse everything.
I think what's important also, man, like writing a novel, that's a lot of stuff, And I think it's one of those things, like write 3 to 5 pages a day and just like stay at it and like do that every day. I think a lot of times we get lost in stories that are, this is a huge story with a lot going on. I think it's really easy to get overwhelmed by it, and I think it's one of those things that just like putting your head down and just going for it,
Yeah, I think that's people talk a lot about like writer's block and not being able to figure out a story. It's like the worst thing you can do is just stop doing it. If you hit a wall, that just means you're going the wrong direction. Then just pivot and find something else to work on. It's like, okay, well, I don't know where to go with this character. I don't know. All right, well, reimagine his journey or his goals.
Sometimes you just work it out on the page. Maybe that's what you're getting at. But writer's block, just not writing anything and just staring. Like sometimes you just got, and it's going to be garbage, but you just have to write it out, and then you get some kernel from it, and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to throw out 2,000 of these 2,100 words, but I got this piece from it. And that's how you work through that. Because then, if anyone says, I have writer's block, just for the last week, I couldn't write anything. It's like, well, yeah, you're not going to get through it if you're not writing. So
yeah. Well, I know like one useful tool when I get writer's block, I know we do it in the room sometimes, is like focusing on a different character than your protagonist for a second. Like I know in day 5, sometimes we've hit walls, and then we've been like, well, what's the other side up to?
The reaction.
Yeah, like what's like, hypothetically say there's bad guys in day 5. Like what are the bad guys up to? What are they doing? And then like that gives you just an entirely new direction. And whether you want to jump to that story or not, you can see that whatever these other entities are doing is affecting the main person's journey, and you can kind of reverse engineer it that way.
There's a lot of reverse engineering involved with 11 Little Roosters that I think Josh could speak on, but it was just one of those things where we had our cast availability and we knew what direction we wanted to go and what part of the story these people were going to fall off, and it was just kind of connecting the dots. So I think for that kind of story, finding out where you want your character to ultimately end and just filling in the blanks from there.
Yeah, that was a lot of trial and error too, because we had some of the main stories going into that, but then we didn't know, like I didn't know Aaron's story. Aaron actually was the one that came up with the professional parody of reversing it. Instead of not killing women and children, that's all he kills.
Then you built from there. You built kind of
Bernie, and then we built
some of that stuff.
Yeah, we had the Bernie
mix up with his daughter killing Joel.
Yeah,
his dad.
yeah, and it just tethered. And then you there were just natural plot threads. We hadn't engineered a certain way. Like we had Blaine wanting attention, we had Gavin banging everyone, and then there was oh, you know what? It makes sense at these. So it's a lot of trial and error too, of just shaking up the pieces and seeing how they fit.
I think a really important thing with novel writing too, with the idea that you can include so many more details when we're talking about things like mythology. It's like, oh, I can dig way deep into that because I can write as many words as I want to. Like that editing becomes even more so important. And it is important to just keep writing every day if you get stuck, even if it's garbage, because at least you can then edit back. Because when I've done any sort of long-form novel writing, I find that most of the time I'm just rewriting and then scaling it back, rewriting and scaling it back. And if you get an inch further, you feel good about it and you've made progress. But you have to be willing to cut out so much of that stuff that you might feel is precious if it's not advancing, what you wanted to say from the get-go.
We go for
Yeah,
another one.
let's do another.
Here we go.
So this one's a little bit more in line with the normal comedy shorts that you guys usually do, so I wanted to get your opinion on it. So it's a modern day short about basically what it's like to date as kind of a nerdy person nowadays, because you want to find someone that shares your interests. So it's about the main character starts off on a dinner date, and he goes through the stereotypical types of nerds. It's a quick shot of him on a date with like the basement dweller who hasn't showered with the greasy shirt and disgusting hair,
Josh.
and then it cuts to a second one where, So it cuts to a second date with a different person where the person has all their game systems out. They can't look away. They're on their phone. They've got a Nintendo Switch in front of them, the DS that's all brought out. And then finally it cuts to a third date where this girl is the perfect one. She's smart, she's funny, she's geeky. And then it's a couple of establishing shots making their relationship seem real, dates, all these other things that they've done until it finally settles down to where they're hanging out at one of their apartments one day. And she gets up to go to the bathroom, and he notices that she left her phone on the table. So he picks it up, and he looks at it, and all of a sudden you just see this look of betrayal go across his face. And then it cuts to her in the bathroom, and she shuts the bathroom mirror window door, like the door right there to the mirror. And he's holding up the phone, and he goes, "What is this?" And you see that what she's been doing is through their relationship, she's been secretly Googling all the nerdy stuff that they've been talking about. And so he's betrayed because he thought that she knew it wasn't like, who's Ganondorf, is Master Chief human or not? And it's all these things, and they break up because he feels like he's been lied to all this time. So then it cuts to the stereotypical romantic comedy. They break up, he's going through this mourning phase, and eventually he realizes that he has to accept her for who she is. So he goes out and buys a ring, and he's like, I'm gonna make this personal. So he goes and he makes like a ring box out of something nerdy. I settled on a Pokeball just for this, and it's like a Pokeball that holds the ring inside of it. So he dashes to her house, knocks on her door. She's like, "What are you doing here?" And he gets down on one knee and he holds it up, and he goes, "This is for you." And she goes, "What is it?" And he goes, "It's a ring box." And she goes, "No, I know, but like, what's the case? I don't know what that is." And he just kind of sits there stunned, and he goes, "Fuck it, I can't do it." And he just walks off. And
So
that's like the
it's
end of the
It's
short.
based on a true story, is what I'm getting.
They say right from experience,
Gotcha.
Okay.
It's funny because it's like she's actively trying to want to date you,
Yeah.
and you're like,
It's like, yeah.
You used Google? It's like, I use Google. I'm using Google right now. I'm trying to look up what you're talking about. Yeah,
It's like also it's like a reversal.
It's a
'cause
reversal,
It would be
yeah.
usually a guy trying to look cooler than he is.
Yeah.
And that's a girl trying to look nerdier than she is.
it's tough, that
Yeah.
one, because you could come off, I don't know. You have to figure out what you're trying to say with it. Like, are you saying, like, accept someone for who they are is basically what
It was
you're
a
trying
play
to
on
say?
that. Like, you should accept someone, but everybody's hypocritical and like they can't really do what they say you should do. And so it's kind of a play on that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's wait, you guys have any?
Yeah, I'm trying to
It's
think,
like,
because
ditch the first part
he
where
himself
just
is
about the
nerdy,
guy
right?
and the girl and make- Yeah,
And
he's a nerdy guy, and like he's just trying to find someone that shares at least some common interest.
Well, there might be a thing where, I don't know, maybe he's been Googling things as well, and maybe there's a hypocritical aspect to it or something. I'm
I thought
trying
about flipping the genders and having it the other way around, where it's the guy, like, it's a girl going on these dates with all these stereotypical guys, and it ends up the other way around.
Well, to me, it's like it's clear that this girl has, like, she's putting in a lot of effort towards him. So the
Yeah.
important thing for me in it is finding where does he have that realization that, it's not all about himself.
Yeah.
Like where's his effort towards her and finding out what she's all about.
He might find his own flaw, right? Is that
Right,
What you're getting
yeah.
at? Yeah.
Well, that's why you were saying, like, you don't want the audience to see it coming, so I thought you do the stereotypical, like, oh, he's going to run to her and propose, and then the turnaround at the end is he's like, never mind, I can't do it anyways, because it's just too much.
Yeah, I would just try to find the moment where that makes him have that self-realization, because otherwise he's just focused on this one part of her behavior as opposed to what it means.
It would be really easy for him to be not the best character if he doesn't have some flaw or there's some commentary on I don't know, the woman is trying, at least, or something like that. It's a weird ground.
I feel like there's an extra twist in there.
Yeah, there's an extra
I don't
twist.
know
Yeah.
what it is, but it needs something at the end to
Because basically the story starts where it ends, where she's she still doesn't know anything, and the twist, the turn. Whenever he finds out she was lying the whole time, and then he decides to go and propose, and then he proposes, and she still doesn't know anything. It's like there's no new information there.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what's so you got. I think you got to figure out what that other turn
Like,
is.
what are the things that she talks about that he needs to Google? Like
Yeah.
what is that exploration?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, that was it. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
All right, so this question is kind of more directed at you guys, but between all the series you've written, Day 5, 11 Little Roosters, Gen Luck, I mean Secret Little Project you guys are working on, you've inevitably made a character and then rejected it. What are some of these more well-made characters that you've inevitably rejected from any of these series, really?
There's been carryovers. There's been things that didn't work in a season. Maybe. I mean, I know in the first
So
season.
I'm trying to understand. You're asking what are some characters that were in something and then we later decided we didn't like, or
characters that we threw out before it ever made it. What's
the first one.
Okay.
Characters
So
we
characters that
didn't
we didn't like that made it to the screen.
That's hard for a writer because that's saying like I did something bad.
You know, I mean, I think there. I mean, there are sometimes characters I think who they exist for a device rather than a character.
Right.
Which is the
where it's like I need someone to, you know,
This person needs a love interest so that there can be stakes.
Yeah.
But that love interest has no depth.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that I think that there's some. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but like that's the worst. That example exactly where it's like this character isn't a character.
They're just a placeholder.
They're a plot point.
Right.
They're a plot point. They progress. They're a shell that progresses plot. And
Yeah.
that's, yeah, I'm trying to think of good ones.
I can't think of any that, you know, I feel like we've all been pretty connected to the characters that we've written. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in there.
I think in the Office tour, Bernie wasn't needed. Like, I think you could have, he was just progressing this tour, and you could have just had the tour. You know, just shown the tour, no Bernie.
I will say, like, I mean, this isn't a character per se, but I mean, if you want like an example of like writing that I think, like, I personally feel like I missed the mark on was iBlade, where I felt like we didn't get the tone right of that short. Like it was stuck somewhere between silly comedy and like harsh medieval reality, and I think it needed to be harsher. Like the harsh medieval world really needed to be all over the office.
Almost Monty Python-esque,
Right,
maybe,
yeah.
in its way, and its treating of stoning and all that other stuff.
Yeah, and it got stuck somewhere in between. So it's like that's always been something that's frustrated me about that project. But that's another thing that we haven't really talked about a lot up here is like nailing tone.
Yeah.
Like that's a huge thing, and being consistent with tone, especially in a comedy. I mean, drama's similar too, but comedy as well. It's like you can have jokes that you think are very funny, and they're very funny in their own right, but they might break your concept. Like you're basically sacrificing your concept and your tone for a one-off joke, and so you have to be careful about that because it's something we look at.
Yeah,
too.
because it's like, what is your world? Is it a world where is it a comedy where people die, or is it like where death isn't taken seriously, where someone can die and it's like, oh, it can be a punchline, or is like a movie like like Dumb and Dumber or something, right?
Right.
People can die and it can be funny, but it's taken, it's actually, you know what we could talk about is Dumb and Dumber, the first one versus the second one, and why the second one was broken.
Yeah.
For tone, because to me it's like Dumb and Dumber, the first one, still took place in the real world.
Right.
It was
Two morons.
two dumb people in a very normal, smart, intelligent world.
And so everyone reacted to how dumb they were.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the sequel was the entire world was dumb. Yeah. They were just more dumb.
Yeah.
And they also had things that like didn't fit within the world. It was more farcical, like
like they bathe at the nuclear power plant and all that. You're like, this is so far tonally from the first
tonally,
one.
yeah. It's like that's not the same world that you built in the first one, and that's at least that's to me like why that movie, the second one, didn't work.
Yeah. Come to our Dumb and Dumber 2 critique panel after this.
I can think of an example of a character that I didn't like that was needed to be in it. So like whenever we did 11 Little Roosters, Josh and I kind of divvied up, and it's like, hey, Josh was like, I want to do episodes 1 and 2 because I know this world, I'm going to establish it and stuff like that. And you say, you take 3 and 4 or whatever. I can't remember what the exact numbers were of episodes that we divided up. Ultimately, we ended up working on each other's episodes. I'd give notes on his, vice versa. But I do remember that there was this plot point with Aaron's character, the Leon the professional character, where he had this like nemesis who was a girl, as opposed to the actual movie where his like sidekick is a girl. And I just remember hating Margaret, I think.
Yeah.
You wanted Margaret so bad, and I was like, I just don't know how to fit her into this world, and I just like I hated that character. And then it actually helped me because I was like, oh well, you know, what if she's related to another character, and what if that makes this, you know, bigger plot point, and it establishes relationships with these characters that they wouldn't have had existed had this, you know, Margaret character hadn't been pushed so hard by Josh. Yeah. So that was like an example of a character that I didn't like, but through trial and error and just like really trying to process it, it's like, oh, well, you know, maybe if I make her this person, I don't know. That didn't really answer your question, but
No, you're good. So we have 10 minutes left. Should we keep doing concepts, or should we open just like broad Q&A?
Might need to just do some
Q&A.
Q&A.
Okay.
If that's all right.
Yeah. Are you guys in line cool with the questions, or what are y'all? You're good? Cool. All right.
I'm gonna go pop over here because we were over there, right? We were over there earlier.
I think so.
Come on.
Hello. So going on a question that I've kind of had for a while, do you guys have a thing that you just keep pitching and pitching and pitching, and they're like, oh, we'll get around to it eventually, but you're just going to keep asking until it gets made? And what is it?
Well, Bath Time with Aaron Marquis keeps getting rejected, and I don't know why. I keep sending the video.
Yeah. We're waiting for the double gold X.
Yeah.
Subscription.
Triple X double gold.
Double gold.
Yeah.
1 Aaron, 2 cups.
I think it's hard for us to kind of talk about things that we really want to make that we've kept pitching and that aren't really getting picked up, because I think, like at Rooster Teeth, there is an opportunity in the future to do that, and we don't want to, you know, talk about like what those specific projects are, because there's something that I've been kicking around, you know, in the back of my head for a while, and Chris is kind of privy to that information. It's just something that it's just like I want to do it, but the timing isn't right for it, you know. But eventually we'll get there. I mean, that's just for me though.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a writer, you shouldn't be just writing one thing. You need to have 6 projects in various states. Not saying you have to be like jumping from one to one to one to one, but you may have a conversation with someone where they're like, "Oh, cool, like I like that. What else you got?" And then you're like, well, you know, I don't, nothing."
Yeah.
And then you miss an opportunity.
Yeah.
I mean, I think actually a really good example of that on a project level was whenever we started working on Day 5, the earlier version. This was actually the first thing that Josh ever wrote at Rooster Teeth, right?
Yeah.
Was Day 5 was a thing that'd been around for a while and had gone through different states, and Matt and Bernie wanted us to write the short version, which was eventually shot, which then later kind of became adapted into the show. But they're like, write a short, like a 30-minute, 20-minute short for this world. And so we went away for like a couple days and wrote out this treatment for this world and da-da-da-da. And we're talking through it, and I just had this instinct. I was like, you know what? I think we need a backup. Like,
yeah, this was like an hour before we were going to present it too, because what we had basically done was we'd written a treatment that was basically the cliff notes of a feature instead of writing like something that was better for like a 30-minute runtime. It just felt like a really fast feature film.
Yeah, and then so we're like, okay, let's think up a backup, and so then we came up with basically, if you've seen Day 5, the storyline of Joel's character. From episode 4 was that storyline, and we came up with it an hour before this meeting.
Yeah.
Went into the meeting and with Matt and Bernie, and they were like, I don't know if we're feeling it.
Yeah.
And they were like, good thing, we have another idea. And then they were like, oh, okay, yeah, that works.
Yeah, and it was it. And they were like, yeah, this is great. And we're like, cool.
Yeah.
I know.
I mean, that happens so often.
Yeah.
I mean, that happened just recently in a pitch meeting with Marshall, right?
Yeah, the top secret project I'm working on basically came about 30 minutes before the meeting. I had 2 other shows I was trying to pitch, and I was talking with Chris about it, and Chris was like, "Yeah, these are good, but you know, what about that one thing that you mentioned?" So I like fleshed it out, and then pitched it in the meeting, and it went over really well, and now we're doing it. So
I had a similar thing happen with 10 Little Roosters too, where it was like I had just finished. I'd been at the company almost a year, but I'd done the Day 5 short. I'd written Laser Team, and we just finished iBlade. And I'd written the treatment for 10 Little Roosters, or like the pitch document for this interactive type of show. And basically Bernie and them came to me and were like, give us a reason to keep you employed. And I was like, well, I have this. And they were like, great, we love it. Let's do it. But even, it's weird. It's all, everything is like reusable. I mean, there's projects that come back. And they were talking about, Chris was saying, write your ideas down. There's pieces of dialogue that we cut from Laser Team that made it into day 5. And
Different context. Like one was a comment, like
Right.
a joke, and then it was recontextualized.
Yeah, and it's suddenly
the line
dramatic.
"Woody, don't poop your pants" there is
Yeah.
in day 5, season 2.
Very dramatic.
Very
There, it was. I mean,
But then even the triple ultra, not Marshall's perfectly adequate secret, but our secret project, that's Chris and I have been working on that idea for 4 years, and it's just now kind of coming to fruition, and hopefully we can talk more about it soon. But it's I mean, it really does. You have these ideas and you save them. You kind of store up a list of pitches and scripts, and there's opportunities.
And not to give anything away, but Josh, a while ago, you had pitched something. I'm going to be very vague about it, but it was just the timing wasn't right, and you had done a lot of conceptualizing, and I had seen some art that you had gotten made for it. Such a beautiful idea, and I think the timing's not right for it, but I hope you sit on that idea and it's going to get picked up because it's a really beautiful idea. I don't know, that didn't contribute
It was
much.
Blaine's life story. That's what it was.
It was beautiful.
And I think it's important to note the people that you're pitching ideas to know their sensibilities, like know what they want to be making and know what they like.
who's your audience?
Who's your audience? Yeah.
Who are you writing for? Yeah, because
Who's your audience still within writing your voice? It's a delicate thing.
Got like less than 5 minutes left.
Cool. All right, we're good. Let's do another one. Take another one.
I have a question. If you're an up-and-coming writer who wants to send a script to some studio or something, what would you do?
So one thing that's very important is you never want to send like unsolicited scripts to places because they won't read it, because they're always scared that there's going to be a lawsuit if they happen to open a document and then they make something similar. So it's definitely something where you need to know those proper channels and try to meet the gatekeepers, and that's
agent management, writing competitions.
Writing
are a great
competitions
way.
are great. I did writing competitions for 3 years, and at the beginning I spent a bunch of money and submitted and didn't do anything, and then by 3 years later my craft had gotten a lot better, and I was placing in the finals and things like that, and it's a great way to meet people and get your script in front of them.
Yeah, because I mean, if nothing else, it gives you a deadline, and it also gives you like practice. And you'll get feedback because a lot of those writing competitions, they'll read it and say, well, here's what didn't work, here's what did work.
But here's the thing too. I mean, really, and I mean, I think all of us have a hand in looking at new writers for the company and all these things. It's like, I mean, good writing speaks for itself. Like when you find a good script, whether it's online or through a contact or something, it's like I know, like it doesn't matter if I meet a person and they pitch well. Plenty of people can sell you on an idea in person, but what matters to me at least is what's on the page. And like you can read someone's script and be like, yes, this person absolutely knows how to write.
Yeah, and I mean, that goes back into what we were talking a little bit earlier about like experimenting with shorts. If you have a script for a feature, like could you go out and shoot a single scene and then try to use that as something to pitch,
Yeah. Proof of concept, less than 3 minutes.
Cool.
Okay.
There it is.
So what kind of physical tools do you guys use in the creative process? I heard like whiteboards, but do you have anything else that like
Drugs,
you need in front of
alcohol. Josh got me into using a whiteboard. That helped a lot during our writing process with the Lone Little Roosters, and I'm hooked on that idea. There's the act of physically writing something down and having it there, especially if it's in big letters, it's just so helpful, and it's just a visual thing.
Google Docs or something where it's like a live feed where people can update a document at the same time.
Yeah, especially if it's a collaborative project.
Yeah. Or if you don't have a whiteboard, if you have a TV and you can Chromecast Google Docs, and then you just like talk and sit around a room and like everyone make ideas, update it live, and just brainstorm.
I think regardless too, if you're not collaborating, find something that's easily shareable with anybody, because you should have a variety of people reading your work anyway. Like it's one thing to have the desire and you've done it and you're excited about it, but you really need to get feedback throughout the process.
Yeah. Also, even like if you're, this is not necessarily writing process, but I mean, if you, what helps me sometimes just inspirationally is if I go online, just search images of what I see in my head. And ultimately, I usually put that stuff into a lookbook or a pitch document anyway, but that kind of stuff can be kind of cyclically encouraging.
I don't have it on me now, but I have been getting into the habit of carrying around like those little moleskin, just tiny little notebook journals things. And I'll have one that's lined, and I'll jot down ideas and just kind of have that to store for later. And then I have another one that's completely blank. And if I have like a really cool visual in mind, I'll sketch it out and I'll do like a storyboard for just a scene that I was like, yeah, that'd be cool to hit later. So I'm very much a physical, like, write this down and it'll help me.
Also have a crying room where you can go.
I was about to say.
It's very vital.
A little ball to throw around too.
Yeah.
That's good.
All right, we got 1 minute. Let's take one more.
On the subject of endings in live action, how do you make the decision whether or not to wrap up a storyline nice and succinctly versus leaving it fairly open? If I can make an example, like Day 5 had a kind of a conclusion to the through plot, but nothing was resolved in the end, obviously for a second season. But how do you decide whether or not you're going to do something like that?
I mean, it just depends. I mean, what categorically what it is, like you're talking about. I mean, if it's a first season, you
close up some of the season stuff.
You close up some seasonal stuff and you leave it open. That's a tough thing. That's a hard thing to figure out with more serial stuff. What is going to be satisfying, even episode to episode? With Day 5, with 11 Little Roosters, it's like, what is, what are people going to walk away and feel fulfilled, but still be missing some pieces? And that's one of those things. It's just trial and error.
I mean, I think if it's something that's serial and you want people to come back and watch again, it's like you want to give answers that are satisfying, but then those answers need to create more questions.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh wow, I feel fulfilled because I got what I wanted, but oh man, but now I want this. Because if you answer everything, then all of a sudden you're like, well, all right, cool, I'm done.
Josh wrote the finale for 11 Little Roosters, and we just kind of kept that open-ended with these characters going on, and there's like a new agency established and stuff like that. And that, like, to me, that worked because it's like, you know that these characters are living on and stuff like that, and that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to continue to get these guys' stories, but it just means like they're continuing to exist in this world, and you kind of, you let the viewer take away what they will. I don't know.
I think that's
our time. Thank you guys so much for
Thank you. Oh God, Chris is throwing merch.